Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
Welcome back to the Federal Drive with Terry Gerton on Federal News Network. A new FAA framework could allow drone operators to fly beyond visual line of sight, opening the door to expanded use in infrastructure inspection, agriculture, and emergency response. The shift would move drone operations closer to routine use across the national airspace. Joining me to explain the impact and the integration challenge is former senior executive in the FAA's National Security Division, Jose Martinez. Mr. Martinez, thank you so much for joining me today.
Terry, thank you for having me today.
We're going to talk about drones. We've been talking about drones a lot, but you have some particular expertise that we want to explore about the change to the limitation on drones around line of sight. They have been historically limited by the line of sight rules, but now the FAA has a new framework to allow them to fly beyond a visual line of sight. First of all, tell us about what motivated that change, and second of all, how the FAA is approaching it.
Well, thank you again. I've spent the better part of 3 decades inside the federal military systems, including running crisis response at the FAA's National Security Division. So what beyond visual line of sight really means, it's a multifaceted effort and multifaceted story. It's a technology story, it's a government capability story, and an industry story. What it is not a Part 107 commercial friends with benefits. It is a completely new framework. So we have to level set our perspective and stop looking backward at Part 107 because it is our closest point of reference, and look forward actually to the future of advanced air mobility. That is actually where the framework is moving towards.
You're describing a really significant shift in concept, and sometimes the government does not make those kind of shifts very smoothly. What have you seen in how the FAA is planning for this new mode?
The inflection point that we are at is almost akin to when helicopters were introduced after World War II, where they came up as a military resource and then got segmented into regular aviation. So what we're looking at is the FAA is using this rule to draw the boundaries of what advanced air mobility will be, giving enough buffer within it to accommodate things like commercial drones up to a certain weight, air taxis that are coming in the next couple of years that are prototype flying right now. And so everyone is zoomed in to Part 108 as it relates to smallish drones, but the FAA is zoomed out into what the ecosystem is going to be.
You mentioned a couple of things there, including air taxis. When you think about real-world applications of the beyond visual line of sight framework, where does it begin to make the biggest difference? Can you give us a couple of examples?
Sure. The biggest immediate gain will be to the federal government, and that will be in several forms. The federal government and federal government agencies have capabilities now where they pilot drones. And so the immediate kind of overnight will be implementing operational capabilities that will remove the necessity to have that pilot and then bring on more resources at a lower cost, covered under less paperwork, and streamlined for efficiency. It will also create, as we've seen in government, that there will be in-house capability and then there will be outside capability where they will bring in private industry. So this is set to drive competition, open up the door for competition that will breed innovation in this space. And then it will kind of loop around and keep moving things progressively upward.
Jose Martinez is a former senior executive of the Federal Aviation Administration's National Security Division. So, Mr. Martinez, this is not just about letting drones fly farther. It's really about integrating them into shared airspace. And so what has to be in place for that to work safely at scale?
Well, at scale, there are two things at play right now. And very smartly, the FAA has realized it needed to modernize its national airspace system. That is in the works right now, and it will drastically change for the better how air traffic is managed well into the future. What they're doing with the management of the drones is establishing a mechanism by having providers. They will be internal and external, depending on whether the government is using them or private industry is using them, to help tie in the management of the routes and what the drones are doing. And so for the drones specifically, it's mandating that the drones pump out their remote ID, that they receive anyone that has the technology for what's called automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, ADSB. So it knows what's going on and can operate in the space. I think in closing here is we need to move away from the thought that these Part 108 drone activities will be somehow intermingled with the commercial air and all these others. Think of it as a layer cake. And, at the very lowest level, you'll have these drones operating. And then above them, first responders and law enforcement. Above them, it will increase until you reach commercial air traffic. These drones will not operate within those spaces.
One of the things we've been talking about as we think about drones and new aviation technology is that oftentimes the technology moves faster than the FAA's ability to regulate and the infrastructure's ability to respond. How do you see that showing up for drones right now?
Well, I think it's expected. And I think it's one of the reasons why the FAA has taken its time to receive as much comments as possible on this proposed rule change. I think the folks that have a dog in the fight would like it to move a little bit quicker and maybe want some mandates that help them out. But the FAA has learned from its past, right? So they are not trying to be the Wright brothers that can stifle innovation by holding the reins too tightly. And so, rightly so, they have pushed out, they have crowdsourced the technology and the data ahead and made projections. And so they've had, luckily for us, there's thousands of drone flights per day. The FAA has gathered all that information and has used what it knows about safety and using what it knows about traditional aviation and is now saying, okay, we are not trying to replace one with the other. This is a completely new class of aviation. Do not think of it as Part 107. Do not think of it as a plane or a helicopter. It's its own thing.
And as the FAA is opening up this beyond visual line of sight operation for drones, it's also proposing new restrictions around critical infrastructure and where drones can be around sites that are designated as critical infrastructure. How do you see these two pieces fitting together?
Well, I think they did the right thing by reopening this portion for commentary. There was a lot of pushback on it because I think on the front end, the folks that are in the space of critical infrastructure would like to dictate what can and cannot be done. And that might not always work. So the FAA initially put out language that was designed to get commentary. It did. And now it will weigh the future of this capability with the concerns and the needs of the government and industry and how it operates. And so I think they're doing the right thing. I believe the balance will be struck there. I think you're going to see, instead of a black and white yes or no, I think you'll see maybe some requirements being put there. Yes, you can do it. Maybe not a whole lot of red tape and bureaucracy in order to do it, so that the streamlined vision of Part 108 can continue to move forward.
And what will you be watching to make sure that this new regulatory framework is having the desired both safety and innovation protection effects that you're hoping for?
I think the thing that I will be looking for are where the concessions are made. I don't believe that any safety adjustments will be made, or adjustments will be made that will kind of make things unsafe. The technology already makes that somewhat difficult to do, to backtrack. And so what I will be looking for is how much bureaucracy squeaks in or squeaks out. Because really the intent is to have Part 107 be Part 107. We will see piloted drone activity decrease, but it won't go away. So the 108 is not replacing 107. So you'll still have that going on. And there are provisions for a category of recreational operations under 108. So I'm actually looking towards that category. How will the previously pilots segue into 108 and be recreational inside that space, while Amazon's doing deliveries and that sort of thing, and folks are doing agriculture? I think I'd like to see how that transition happens. I think the rest of it will even out as more players come into the field.
Jose Martinez is a former senior executive of the Federal Aviation Administration's National Security Division. Really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Terry. It's been a pleasure.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Listen to the Federal Drive on your schedule. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Still to come, electric aircraft are coming, but the rules that allow them to fly are not. But first, as drones take on a bigger role in the airspace, the rules around them are getting more complicated, but also more coordinated than you might expect. You're listening to the Federal Drive with Terry Gerton on Federal News Network.